All of the complaining is behind me. I'm gonna definitely be trying Season 1 of Diablo. I'm not naive enough to think I can't be wrong, and maybe the game will be fun, who knows. I'm absolutely still going to give it a try, and I'm gonna be going with one of my favorite builds from the preseason, which was Penetrating Shot. So if you're a Sorcerer Refugee or a Barbarian Refugee, grab a bow, come on in, and we're going to talk about Penetrating Shot. Now, arguably on paper, Twisting Blades Rogue is the better build. However, I much more enjoy the ranged playstyle of the Marksman Rogue, and Penetrating Shot, in my opinion, is one of the most satisfying skills in the game. Combine it with Shadow Imbue and the Trick Shot aspect, and you will destroy screens of mobs. The build focuses on generating 3 combo points with your basic ability, in this case Puncture, to then fire an enhanced version of Penetrating Shot. This can be imbued with any of the imbuements you choose to use. In this build, we'll be using Poison and Shadow. And finally, we'll be using Shadow Step to escape any CC the enemies put us under. And Poison Trap for a nice defensive tool. It will also allow us to reset the cooldown of our imbuements 30% of the time. Now that we have how the build works out the way, let's talk about the key aspects that are important for this build. Defensively speaking, we did get hit pretty hard with the reduction in damage mitigation we can actually get on our gear. So our defensive aspects are primarily here to compensate for that. We have the aspect of might, which is going to grant us damage reduction when we use a basic skill, which is basically all the time, given that we need them to generate combo points. Next, we have disobedience. This did get nerfed, however, it still remains incredibly powerful. You can see here it only goes up to 30% now. This is still very strong. Next, we have Umbrus. This basically allows us to have a 7th skill in the form of Dark Shrouds. You'll see it on the skill tree. Dark Shroud grants us damage mitigation per stack, and 1 can be consumed when we are hit. So this can give us up to 40% damage reduction if we do not choose to invest into Dark Shroud itself. And finally, we have Pentant Greaves for the boots. This can be exchanged for a different pair of boots with movement speed, dexterity, dodge chance, any kind of damage reduction. And for the aspect, you're going to want to grab the Shadow Step aspect that gives you a 2nd charge. Now, for offensive aspects, there are a lot of choices for this build. I elected to go with, this will cause us to generate an Arrow Storm when we lucky hit 10% of the time, which is very common for Penetrating Shot. You'll notice a theme when we're going through this build. Penetrating Shot has a very high inherent lucky hit chance. Scaling lucky hit modifiers is actually pretty good for this build. For the weapon, we go for Edge Masters. This is going to give us 40% more damage based on our primary resource. This will be full a lot of the time because of skill tree choices and just the basic playstyle of combo point. On the amulet, we have the Trick Shot aspect, which causes our Penetrating Shot to split when it hits a target. This is obviously very important for clear and giving it more damage. We put it on the amulet for the extra 50% bonus, as this will increase our clear speed quite significantly. For the rings, basic skills gain attack speed. This is great for generating combo points faster. Corruption on the 2nd ring, so our imbuement skills have increased potency. This is going to cause our shadow explosions to do more damage. We're going to do more poison damage. Then on our legendary weapon, we're going to have the expectant aspect, which is brilliant for combo point builds, as when we basic attack 3 times to build 3 combo points, we will then be doing 30% more damage with our Penetrating Shot, so a fantastic pickup. And finally, the unique dagger Condemnation. This could be swapped out for an accelerant aspect if you do not have this unique dagger, but Condemnation is very, very good for this build. Even though the stats aren't fantastic, it's still very competitive with a well-rolled sword. Now let's talk about the skill tree, starting with the basic skills. We have Puncture. This is our primary method of building combo points and applying a vulnerable to the target. That's done with Fundamental Puncture. Now you will have to stand a bit closer to the enemies than you would with something like Forceful Arrow, but I'd say the trade-off is very much worth it, as Puncture has a much higher attack speed than Forceful Arrow, so you're going to build those combo points faster. We have, of course, Penetrating Shot, which when you build 3 combo points does up to 240% of the base damage, and you gain 30% lucky hit chance. That's why you can see there at the top, we end up having a very high amount of lucky hit, which is actually the reason that I think this build in particular can still get away with running Siphoning Strikes. Despite this being changed, and it is now a lucky hit effect, this build in particular, with the sheer amount of lucky hit you get, can still take good advantage of this Siphoning Strikes. For my testing in 1.1 so far, it still feels absolutely great for the build to have that built-in sustain. Next, we have Shadow Step in the agility skills. We're going to use Enhanced Shadow Step and then Methodical Shadow Step to stun the targets. This is a great way to engage on a pack of elite mobs. You can Shadow Step to one and then drop a Poison Trap, so you will stun the elite, and then your Poison Trap will knock them all down. You can build up your combo points and then just explode them all. So this makes for a pretty easy playstyle. And obviously being in close proximity to the mobs will mean that your Siphoning Strikes is active and also your Sturdy will be active. Next, we have Concussive. After knocking back or knocking down enemies, we gain a large amount of critical strike chance. This is fantastic early on before you have a lot of critical strike chance on your gear, as advanced penetrating shot will cause you to knock down elite enemies, as well as the knockdown that you will get from poison trap. Weapon mastery gives us increased critical strike damage whilst we're using crossbow. If you find a very, very good bow, then you will gain increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies instead, both of which are very good. And the gap between bows and crossbows certainly decreased with the reduction in vulnerable damage on the crossbow now. Dark Shroud, as I mentioned, very important for the Umbrous aspect, so that we can gain this 8% damage reduction per active shadow, all the way up to 5, giving us 40% damage reduction. You can also spec into this or get a roll on your pants that give you plus levels to Dark Shroud, which will further increase the damage reduction. Then we have Enhanced Dark Shroud, so that we have a 1 in 7 chance not to consume one when we're hit. And then countering Dark Shroud to gain more critical strike chance. Poison Trap, as mentioned frequently, is there for the knockdown effect from Enhanced Poison Trap. And then also countering Poison Trap, which can refresh the cooldown on our imbuement skills. Shadow Imbue, it goes without saying, this is the most fun part of the rogue builds. Exploding the screens of mod is only made possible because of this skill. Grab Enhanced Shadow Imbue and Blended Shadow Imbuement. This may seem like it's not very important as you're applying vulnerable with other methods. Believe me, when you're fighting large packs of enemies, this vulnerable damage from the Shadow Imbuement really comes in handy. You'll notice a big increase in clear speed when you use this against when you don't, for sure. Poison Imbue is great to add some single target to the build. We can imbue our attacks against single target bosses or elite enemies. It also just gives us the ability to imbue more attacks. The more attacks we can imbue, the more benefit we get from things like Eldritch Bounty, or just any source of imbued skill damage we have from the Paragon board. Precision Imbuement gives us, again, more critical strike chance. You can see just how much we're getting from this skill tree so far. Then, if you have Pentrating Greaves, you can pick up Frigid Finesse to gain 15% additional damage against chilled enemies. If you do not have Pentrating Greaves, remove these, and they go straight into Trap Mastery, so that you gain 12% increased critical strike chance against vulnerable and crowd-controlled enemies. Innovation just guarantees that we're very well capped on our energy, which is very important for our Edge Masters aspect to be fully loaded at all times. And then finally, Adrenaline Rush for some energy regen, and Haste for additional movement speed. Keystone passive is Precision. This gives us increased critical strike damage and guarantees that one of our marksman skills crit. Unfortunately, Puncture is a marksman skill, so it is going to consume some of those charges, but it's all good. Now, this Paragon board will be linked in the description, as well as any alterations I've made to it since the time of recording. I've made some adjustments from the preseason to include some more defensiveness from the Paragon board. It's something we didn't have to think about in preseason, so I've tried to include more armor, maybe more rare node scaling modifiers, and this is what I've come to so far. So starting out in the first tree, we have Combat. Exploit, vulnerable damage is more valuable right now because everything else got reduced, but the glyph did not, so we get 35% from here. We also get a good amount of armor and some core skill damage on the Cunning Stratagem board. Next, moving over to the Exploit Weakness board, we grab the Infusion glyph. This is a very strong glyph for this build because not only does it give us 115% increased imbued skill damage, but it also gives us the opportunity to reduce the cooldowns of our imbues. I have elected to go out of my way to grab Unassailable, which is just some extra damage reduction from vulnerable targets. Maybe in the past I wouldn't have come and grabbed this, but it is quite easy to get to. It's only like 4 points out of our way. Then on the Eldritch Bounty board, this is a very strong node for this build. We gain 20% increased damage for our Imbuement's element for 9 seconds. So when we use Shadow Imbue, we do 20% more shadow damage. When we use Poison Imbue, 20% more poison damage. We also grab a decent amount of imbued skill damage, non-physical damage, as well as using the Ranger glyph, which gives us 10% reduced damage while wielding a ranged weapon, and also 60% increased marksman skill damage. Now, this is where I've made the biggest change to my tree. I've chosen to use the Efficacy glyph on this page. You can see I haven't quite leveled it enough to grab these 2 intelligence nodes. But what this is going to do is it's going to give us a decent chunk of armor from this node right here, as well as granting our imbuement skills 20% additional potency, so more shadow damage from the explosions, more poison damage from Poison Imbue. And then down here, there's some very strong crit damage nodes in the form of Havoc and the adjoining blue nodes. Then finally, this one I'm not 100% sold on right now. This obviously will be much later into progression. This is a level 100 character. But I've chosen to go to the No Witnesses board and grab the Control glyph. Control is very good if you have the Pentrating Greaves, as you will be slowing and chilling everything as you run by them. So you will gain a large amount of damage from this glyph. If anything is to change with this in the new season, I'll be sure to leave an update to let you guys know. But this is what I've come to right now. Now let's finish off by discussing something I can't at this moment be 100% certain of. So this is something that I'll definitely be making a video on in a couple of days' time. But we'll talk about the Malignant Hearts you're likely going to want to try and find early. The first one would be Revenge. This one seems incredibly powerful. 10 to 20% of incoming damage is instead suppressed. If this just means it deals no damage, well, then that's fantastic. You just take 20% less damage. That's a good compensation for some of the nerfs. It's not entirely compensating, but it's better than nothing. Also, when we use a subterfuge skill, our poison trap is a subterfuge skill. All the suppressed damage is amplified by 250% and explodes, deals a large amount of fire damage. This is based on a level 20 heart, so I imagine this damage will go a lot higher. So this one is fantastic for Rogue. I really like this one and something I'm definitely going to be trying to use. Next, if we look at the actual Rogue ones, we have the Vile Apothecary. This one, of course, we're going to have to wait till tier 4 to get, but it means that our attacks have a 5 to 15% chance to apply all imbuement effects at 40 to 50% of normal potency. So this is just going to add a layer of consistency to our penetrating shots. Every 7th penetrating shot, if you have like a max roll on this, is going to apply every imbuement to that penetrating shot. So it's not the best on this build. It's probably better on something like a Rapid Fire or a Twisting Blades. But, you know, I think this one's still good. And then I'm definitely going to try the stun grenade one. This could be great for farming. Obviously, we lucky hit very frequently. So having 20% chance to launch 3 stun grenades. It's good offensively, it does some damage right, but it's also very good defensively because we're going to be stunning the mob. So this one could be fantastic. And then there wasn't really much else on top of that. There are some okay ones in here. We have things like the Malignant Pact, which is going to give us attack speed or just more primary resource and maybe a bit of barrier. But yeah, those are the ones that I'm looking at right now. But stay tuned to the channel and we will be looking more into this over the next few days. So that's my plan for Season 1. Good luck with your start, and if you have any questions, you can find me live on twitch.tv/MilkyBK. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and I'll see you next time.